What is the meaning of Prophet Muhammad's suffering? When the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was humiliated and mocked by the Quraysh pagans, God said, I'll answer for you to those mocking and making fun of you. It brings up a question. If God talks about the protection of his Prophet, what for were the trials and the tortures of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him? We know from his story about the abuse and cruelty of the pagan enemies towards him. After all, the Almighty said that he, peace and blessings be upon him, is under his protection, because it's easy for the Almighty to keep the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, out of sorrow. After all, he could grant safety to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, make the enemies be kind to him. Why did not this happen? These trials for Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, have two wise reasons. The first reason is that although Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was the last messenger, he is at the top of those who invite unto God. He brought the message of God. He leads everyone who intends to call to the path of God after him. He is the leader of all Islamic preachers, all callers to Islam. He is the Imam and the example to follow for them. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, arrived after a long gap between the divine messages at the time when people drifted away from the truth. God's messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, knew that before the judgment day, there would be people calling to the path of God, following his example. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said about it, bring to the people at least one ayah from me, i.e. God's messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, called the whole community to dawah, called to Islam, so that everyone, to the best of their ability, should call non-religious people to Islam. The messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, knew that the chain of people calling to Islam would continue up to the judgment day, and that he would be a model for those people. Though the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, knew that God takes care of him, protects him against the scoffers, he did not resort to his help. Why? He did not because he thought about the people who would continue his work. He knew that those calling to Islam after him would face hardships. Calling to Islam is a hard path where people face many difficulties and trials, are scoffed and humiliated. Therefore, the messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, thought about those who would call to the way of God. How would they feel if in the time of privation, injustice, oppression on this tough path, they happened to read that the Prophet's life was a bed of roses and that he did not face any difficulties or trials? As he was the last of the messengers of God, God offered protection only to him. He chooses this plight for the love of his followers who would call after him to the path of Islam. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, selects a path of severe trials, starvation, abuse, and humiliation. The messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, made this choice voluntarily. He, peace and blessings be upon him, decided since his followers are to face adversity from non-believers, he would be the first to experience this pain, to take the tough burden, to hear the insults and mockery from unbelievers. He, peace and blessings be upon him, thought that if this path requires leaving one's home and a worldly pleasure, he must be the first to go through it. Why? By these, Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, shows his mercy, his love for the people who do the most holy deed, call to Islam. And people who face challenges, hardships, scoffing when calling to Islam after the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, will be pleased to know that they are suffering, though to a lesser degree, as God's messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, did. And indeed, for the people who sincerely call upon the path of Almighty, these difficulties are a pleasure they enjoy. That is because they know that their leader, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, suffered much more. For this sake, the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, voluntarily refused the protection that Allah granted him, so that his followers, undergoing at least part of what he suffered, did not despair, overpowered by the ordeal, and tried to overcome. That is the first wise reason. The second wise reason is the lesson of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, to all of us. We must always remember this practical lesson from the life of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. It tells us how to behave in the situation when we hear the unbelievers hooting about our religion or the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. The Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, shows us by his example how to behave in such cases. Let us remember, for instance, how the citizens of Taif met the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, and his companions who came to invite them to Islam. They were hailed with stones. The Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, was bleeding, but it was not the toughest ordeal of his life. In fact, there were even worse times. When the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, made a prostration near the Kaaba, the pagans began throwing the gods of stuffed animals at him. But he, peace and blessings be upon him, endured it as well. These stories are countless. The main thing is that despite all these, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, did not give up calling people to Islam and was steady in his purpose, indifferent to all the hardships. He preached the same to his companions. Instead of avenging the cruelty to him and his followers, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, prayed to God for them. And then, after the inhabitants of Taif hailed the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, with stones, and he had to leave the city, one of the companions said to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, "O Messenger of God, please pray to the Almighty." They were enraged and wanted the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, to ask God to punish Taif. However, the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, appealed to the Almighty, "O God, guide the Saqif tribe and make them believe." He, peace and blessings be upon him, did not even think about revenging the citizens of Taif. Instead, he requested God to guide them to the path of truth. This is the second wise reason for the trials of God's messenger, peace and blessings be upon him. For indeed, the struggle between the truth and lies will not stop until the judgment day. It is a great lesson to any caller to Islam. The Almighty has given us a great mission and says, meaning, "Let there arise out of you a group inviting to all that is good, enjoining what is right and forbidding what is wrong." God also says, meaning, "Who is better in speech than one who calls to God, works righteousness, and says, I am of those who bow in Islam." The attitude and feelings underlying the appeal to Islam are also noteworthy. Of course, they must be those of the Messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, love and compassion for all, mercy, especially to the fallacious. Only these feelings, wishing good for all, should underlie calling to Islam. In no case should they include rage, hatred, and fury against the people who do not understand the truth. Rage and fury cannot create anything, they can only destroy. After all, Islam is good, honest advice, the desire of good and blessing for everybody. This lesson is one of the most important in the life story of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Calling to Islam can only be effective if the callers wish good. The invitation to Islam has never been through bloodshed, explosions, and threats. We have recently witnessed obscene caricatures and publications about the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. All these was well planned. After all, this did not happen dozens, hundreds of years ago, and suddenly it does. What for? What is their purpose? Their purpose is first to awaken certain patriotic feelings in Muslims. Second, it is a try to pull Muslims into the turmoil. These are the two motives behind these publications. People who ordered these articles want Muslims to be out in the streets shouting and raising havoc. It is the only goal of these enemies of Islam. And most Muslims are nose-led by this scenario. What are we to do? Just as the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, did. Do not react to any provocation. Invite to Islam sincerely, no matter what they are trying to rope us into. This is our duty. This is what the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, did, and so did his companions. And no other approach will give us a better result.